Hello and welcome back. Jesse Bayer, Abundant Living Ecuador. We are a real estate and development company located in the Vilcabamba, Loja region of the Southern Andes of Ecuador. Thanks for joining us. This is another episode of Expat Profiles, although it could be Professional Spotlight also, and we'll talk about that today. So I'm joined today by Chris Normile, which I'm sure they want to pronounce Normile here, or some such iteration. Chris, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time. So Chris is a fascinating guy. It would take many hours to get into all of Chris's talents and his background and all the things he can do. But I don't know, he's kind of a mix. I'm going to go out on a limb here. He's kind of a mix between, Stephen Hawking, Bill Gates, MacGyver, and, a farmer, like a great farmer. What am I missing
I'll
there?
go with that. Less of the creepy, evil, nerdy type.
Yeah, and I leave that part out. I'm just talking about the
we'll
science.
Venn diagram, and we'll head closer to the MacGyver,
Yeah.
and I could put MacGyver to shame on a one-on-one.
Yeah, I mean, he can actually. So Chris has been here how long now?
We're getting on 7 months.
7 months. So you're 7 months in. We're sitting in Tumianuma, about 20 minutes from Vilcabamba. We're looking at a freshly plowed, is that the right word? Tilled, plowed field behind us that's about to get planted in the next week or so. And we got a little huerta, a little orchard in front of us. And this is an agricultural project that we're doing. We're doing a partnership on with some investors through the company. It's one of our projects, and Chris is the guy. He's heading up the project. He's the agricultural wizard, as I like to say. So Chris is out here. So we're going to talk a little bit today about Chris's experiences, his first 7 months in Ecuador. He did a shipping container. I know that was an experience. He did a shipping container.
The ulcer is finally gone.
The ulcer.
It's healed. It's good.
It's good to hear. Those are painful. Did the shipping container, did the visa. He's out here doing agriculture. He does not speak Spanish, so you're navigating that whole world while also being a boss and running a great crew. So that's quite a story to tell in and of itself. I think I mentioned agriculture. We'll talk about that and just kind of get your thoughts in general on life and so on and so forth in Ecuador. So again, thanks for taking the time. Let's start with some of the background. So tell us a little bit about where you come from, who you are, and then what made, we'll take it from there.
Well, let's see. I grew up my early years in suburbs in California. Didn't grow anything, didn't plant anything, we ate out at restaurants. That was kind of what that was. And that, I guess, didn't suit me. I've reverted a couple of generations back to my great-grandmother. We are now doing a full self-sufficient homestead. We do everything ourselves. Like I told Jess, I'm like, you want a pastrami sandwich? I'm going to start with the dirt. We're going to grow good dirt. We're going to make the right things to grow a cow. We're going to grow a cow. We're going to grow the spices. We're going to do all of our own smoking. We're going to cure it. I'm going to make you the bread. We're going to grow the vegetables. Like every part of that is, I can do that. And my gosh, it's good when you do. So I've reverted back to the older generations of self-sufficiency. And I really enjoy growing things. Like I do. I did a stint, I went through all sorts of technologies. I went through repairing pretty much everything you can imagine, industrial automation. And I ended up in California, where if you're out of work and you know industrial automation, you end up automating weed. So that was fun for a while. Did large scale production there. Ended up in Ecuador because it's beautiful. We can grow year round. We can grow whatever we want. Like this was our dream of, we had a huge spreadsheet of let's look at the whole world. Nothing is off the table. Nothing. Put together the spreadsheet. What is important to us? And we start going down the items, hundreds and hundreds of items of like, well, this place is out, this place is out. And it started local. We started with our local area where we were living at the time in Washington. And there was problems, things, politics, toxic, whatever, weather's going to change on it. Okay, so we kept eliminating places, and finally we ended up where there's exactly two answers. One of them, the number one spot was right here in Ecuador. The number two spot was in Tennessee. And I loved it to death.
You moved there.
We moved there,
yeah,
and we spent a couple of years, refurbed a house, which financed our trip here. And the only thing I have to say that's bad about it is it's still in the U.S., so you're beholden to some of those laws and practices. And I mean, it's some nitpicks, but honestly, we loved it. But we didn't have the true freedom that we really wanted, and the full year-round growing season. There's still winter there. There's no winter here. Tumianuma, where we're sitting right now, it's lovely year-round. It gets slightly hotter in the quote summer. It gets slightly cooler in the winter. And what I mean by cooler is it gets into the 70s, and then it's into the 80s in the summer. So we're gonna rock this place year-round. We're gonna pull 3 harvests a year on a continual basis, trying to do permaculture. Permaculture-ish.
Yep.
True permaculture has gotten a weird rap in recent years, and it's turned into a very labor-intensive. You're rotating things, and you're running your animals around. You're doing this, you're doing, and I watch it, and I'm like, you're leading people astray. That's a lot of work, and your results aren't really any better. Go a little bigger, go less stress, engineer the environment and the setup to be easy. And I tell the guys who work for us, I want your life to get easier and easier as time goes on. I want you to work less. I want life to be less stressful. And they just kind of look at me like I'm crazy. But then they start to see like, oh, we've done this. We've built a road. Now they don't have to walk through a terrible muddy path. Oh, we built water lines. Well, now the plants just sort of get watered. And the results improve right along with it.
Okay, so 7 months ago, I guess you started the process way before that, but 7 months ago you moved down here. Did you come with the visa? Did you get the visa after you got here? How did you deal with that?
So we got the visa after we got here. We were told that's a lot easier than, it's one of those, it is easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission, was kind of the thing of, you can go through the embassy, you can do the thing, and it's the full gamut of like, we really wanted our visas beforehand. We wanted that security, and people were like, you know what, it's just get here. Jesse turned me on to a really good guy, a very talented lawyer who took care of the whole process. We give him the paperwork.
That's Joseph.
Joseph.
Yeah, we interviewed him on the channel recently. That just came out a couple of weeks ago, so you guys can check that out.
Solved whatever problem came across. Very professional, reasonable, like fees. Just, and I send him and other people like, that's it. Hand him your paperwork. Worry no more. He does a really nice job. So that took care of that part. We actually started about 3 years before, and that was our planning stage. We came down to visit, met Jesse. And that was we need to make sure. We need to make sure this is everything that we think it is. Now, we think so. But you got to feel a place. You have to see it. You have to taste it. You have to wander around for a while and get a feel for it. So we did that. We decided it's definitely for us. We were dead broke. We literally broke the piggy bank, which was a pickle jar. Not joking. And we took all the change that was left. There wasn't many quarters because laundry. We took the last of the change and we bought our last airline ticket to get us home from the trip.
The first trip.
Yeah, to get down here. So we got back penniless.
Yeah.
And that was it. We spent everything we had just to come see, to make sure. So we're like, okay. So we drew up a 2-year plan, turned into 3.
Yeah.
Happens.
Yeah.
Worked a deal, bought the cheapest house we could find on an MLS listing. It was really bad. Don't recommend it. I can fix things. Fine. It's just work. I'm fine with work. Let's fix it. So we fixed it, made the money, financed the trip. We bought a container. The container is awesome. I suggest it. We named it Stimmy. So remember the stimulus checks? Yeah. So it turns out that a family of 3 stimulus checks was the same price as the container. So Stimmy, we still have Stimmy. We love it to death. It's secure storage. It holds all of our tools and our things. We're going to put solar panels on it here in the near future. Yes, it's stressful, and there's things and there's stuff. And you know what? In the end, it gets here. It works out.
Did you have to pay a bunch of extra in immigration? Did you get held up or did you get through?
So we screwed up in the middle of the night packing like the last days, because you're packing at 2 in the morning on your very last days, trying to get out of your house, to load a container, to get a flight, the thing, stuff you've planned 6 months before. You're closing on a house, person's backed out, another person thing, something. We labeled a container, or you have to label all the boxes with all the contents. We used a number twice. Sirens went off. Delegations had to arrive
SWAT
from
team.
the UN, SWAT team. I'm like it was an international incident because we used a number twice. We used Paul Wilches.
Yeah. Also interviewed on the channel recently.
Paul's like, oh no, use number twice. Like, oh, what have you done? I'm like, I'm sorry. The wife's like, it's my fault. She's crying and it's horrible. Paul's like, no, I'll fix it. Which had we heard, like, he has the ability to fix things. He's been in that business a long time. He knows what he's doing. I think it was a couple $100.
All right.
Everything made it through. Nothing was a problem. We got our container.
Nothing destroyed, nothing missing.
No, I will make the recommendation of the customs guys are rough.
Yeah.
They're rough. You pack it lovely. We spent a week carefully packing and nesting. They yank it all out. Instead of they pick through a few things, shuck it back in. So we invested in, there's black totes you get from like Sam's Club, Walmart, like the big, buy them. Buy lots of them. Put them on pallets. Stack them up. Wrap them in plastic. Put the right numbers on them. And that's it. They'll pull them out with a forklift. They'll open them. They'll stack them back up. They'll put them right back in. Nothing will be broken. We lost some of the totes because they stacked heavy ones on light ones. They're $7.
The tote itself.
The tote itself took damage, got crushed. A couple of them, got stuff pushed in them. I think we lost like 3 or 4 totes.
No big deal.
No big deal. Everything else made it.
All right. And so that, as those stories go, that's a pretty successful one.
So that's
couple $100, couple of busted totes. That's not
considering
too bad.
the price of the container and the shipping and everything else. The couple $100 is like, it's nothing.
Yeah.
But the container has value. You can use it for all sorts of things. It's waterproof. It's secure.
All right. So then you guys initially moved to Loja. You're commuting to Tumianuma, where we are now, which is in the Vilcabamba, Kinara area. You bought some property in Zamora.
Yep.
So you're kind of all over the region.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about those 3 places and some of your experiences.
So we bought the Zamora property just for our visas. We did an investment visa. So you have to buy a property worth X amount of money. So we found a Zamora property, 16 hectares, fit the bill. It's pretty. We're not using it currently, but if we did, we would be able. Literally gets to the top of the hill, and we could see the entire city of Zamora from it.
Oh, is that right?
Oh yeah, like you hike up to the top, that's it. Left or right, you're dead smack in the middle.
Cool.
I think to the north, and you can see all of it.
Well, that makes for a fun sort of touristy type project.
I'm like, if I built an Airbnb up here,
we should talk about that. That'd be fun.
We might do something with that. Otherwise, it's natural jungle. We saw a monkey. Like a howler monkey. We're like, there's a monkey. We came to Ecuador. We saw a monkey. We're so excited.
Just real quick, so Zamora, the city, which it's really a town, but they call it a city, is an hour from Loja. So it's an hour east of Loja. It's just into the Amazonian region. And then that property that you're talking about, the first one, is about 10 minutes outside, something like that.
Yeah, you go like to the middle of the town and you take a left and you head up a little valley.
Yeah.
Loja sits at about 6,000 feet.
Yeah, 6,500 or so,
And then you climb over the pass, and then a long way down you get to Zamora, which is a lower elevation. Pretty much from Loja, it's over a pass and down to somewhere. You get up towards Zamora, it's a little warmer, it's a little more humid.
A lot more rain,
More rain. It's just there is every kind of climate here. It depends what you want.
And what so you've had a lot, you moved to Loja. Loja is not a place where tons of people speak English.
Yeah.
You're jumping into all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I've heard some stories about some of the hilarity and some of the sort of cultural stuff that you're trying to figure out and all that. I don't know if you want to give examples or funny stories or just talk about it in general, but what has that experience been like?
So there's a big enclave of expats in Vilca. There's a lot of them. You can happily go about your day and speak just English, and there's so many there that there's a community. Loja doesn't. You can count the gringos on one hand, or some of them, and that's what we wanted. We didn't want all the expat community, and it's interesting, but it wasn't what we wanted. We wanted to immerse ourselves in the local community, so we did, and we actually really liked it. People we found are generally really warm and friendly. I wander around places. I'm like, hey, I'm trying to solve a thing, something I'm translating with my phone on Google Translate, which sort of works. it gets you halfway there. Sometimes everyone just sort of looks at each other like, what does that mean? Okay, we'll try that again. So I I don't hold back with just wandering around, wandering into places, asking for random stuff. I'm like trying to solve a thing. I'll draw a picture. Everyone's like, if you're trying to communicate and do a thing, mostly people are really open and friendly and wonderful. And I've had just a bunch of wonderful experiences. So we enjoy it. It is cooler, and in the end, we could not have the gardens and the animals and the things and the stuff. And it's just a little cool of a climate. It sits in the low 70s a lot, sometimes in the 60s.
Yep.
It just doesn't get hot enough to push the vegetation up. But I love Loja. I think it's a cool town.
Yeah. Okay. And so then, yeah, you haven't spent a ton of time in Vilcabamba, but obviously you go there occasionally. It's warmer, of course. We're in that region here, better for growing. But then really, yeah, if you're talking, Zamora, that's gushing water. That's hot, humid climate. Yeah. Not always hot, but the humidity, generally speaking, is there.
It's a little higher. It's not as high as I was afraid. I cannot...
The heat, you mean?
The humidity itself.
Oh, the humidity, yeah.
I can't take crazy humid. I can't sleep in it. So I was pleasantly surprised. It cools off at night.
It does, yeah.
And we lived in Pennsylvania when I was real small. It does not cool off at night. It's 90 in the day. It's 85 at night. It's miserable. Tough, it's 100% humidity, and it's horrible. So it cools off at night. It's actually really kind of lovely. Some days are warmer. Some days there's definitely more rain. Most days there's 15 minutes of rain. Every other day there's an hour of rain. Kind of reminds me of Florida. So far I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. All right. So then let's jump into agriculture and work here a little bit. So you have an extensive agricultural background from the States, homesteading sort of yourself, as well as running cannabis operations and I think a bunch of other stuff. Now you've dove into agriculture here. You've been, what, 3, 4, 5 months or something in that, or?
Oh, geez. We're getting up towards 6.
Okay, so about 6 months into agriculture here.
Yep.
Compare and contrast a little bit.
It's a little different. So in the States, mostly, you get your nice chunk of flat land, you follow the procedures, you plant the things, you do all the, yeah. There's a lot of, it's a little more cut and dry.
Sure.
What we get into here, and this is where it gets into permaculture. So if you get into typical farming, you buy flat land, you do your thing. If you get into permaculture, you try to use the land for what it is and how it is. Coming through and flattening the mountains down. The views behind us, you can't see over this hill, are just these majestic, gorgeous cliffs. The place is beautiful. In front of us, I'm looking at coffee. I'm looking at fruits I literally don't know the name of. There's bananas right there. There's cacao growing. We left a lot of that. There's a lovely creek that runs below us. And I really wanted to leave, strips of all the natural, the beauty that's here. And let's work with it. So we have a field over here, and that has one style of growing. And irrigation and planting and a certain kind of crop. And then we come over here. This is totally different. This is actually tilled. It's the only field here that is actually tilled. It's mostly flat. We're going to do one more in the front. But everyone is we're going to treat differently, grow different things in the correct place for what the plant wants. And that's not, commercially, that's not a normal thing. Normally you monocrop. So the hill up here, and I've interspersed plantings. We have different kinds of watermelon. We have a squash pumpkin thing that people here love. Makes delicious soup. A couple of kinds of watermelon, and they're interspersed.
Peppers,
bell peppers. So we have some different stuff going on, and that's one of those. There's a bit of diversity. If there's a bug problem, it's going to hit this, but it's not going to like the next thing. So we're breaking things up. We're not monocropping, and that has, as we're trying to do this without pesticides or any other sort of sprays, you have to take a different approach to things. It's a little more of the setup, it's a little more of the thinking ahead, and a little more of how do we make this work without destroying the land as it is.
Yeah, and you mentioned, one of the things, for example, that you mentioned to me, because of the sort of year-round climate, things like peppers. You can turn into a tree, for example, or there's just some differences there.
There is very little information you're going to find on growing peppers. And so there's a climate. So in North America, you have climates. You have winter, you have summer. If you're in the South, you have your cooler time, your warmer time. If you get into places like Florida, it's just silly hot and humid all the time. And that's sort of close. Hawaii is sort of close, but again, it's a little different. Hawaii is some of the better information we can pick up for here. People grow peppers, and they get them, and they grow them, and the plant gets to, 4 feet high, 5 feet. Oh, it's a good plant, right? You get some peppers off it, a couple of blooms of them, and then it's done. It's done for the year. Do you know peppers don't die? They actually keep going. So if you look up stuff that's grown in Hawaii or possibly greenhouses, when you get into commercial production, they just continue to grow. Some of them, I found reports 4 or 5 years before something happens, a mold or a bug will finally take the plant down. But every time its harvest increases, and then it gets bigger, and then it drops more peppers the next time, and then bigger again, and then more, and it just continues to grow. So besides getting 3 harvests a year, we're looking at a crop that doesn't have that turnaround of downtime. Mm-hmm. So the profit potential is pretty solid.
You've talked to me before about just sort of some of the, we don't have to get too much into the reasons maybe you wanted to leave the U.S., but just sort of some of the differences between your experiences living in the U.S., sort of the health stuff, the culture stuff, the sort of just interactions with people and kind of what's going on there versus being here, seeing how those things are here. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, yeah. We go back to the spreadsheet of like what's important to us. Family, food, security of family, which is in general food, security of your homestead, your family is being denigrated in the United States. It's being attacked. It's being looked upon lesser in these strange ways that does not appeal to me. Ecuador is a family-based culture. Families are important here. You take care of your family. You look at housing, there's not a lot of turnover because, of course, you're going to take the house that your parents have given you, that your grandparents have built for them, and it passes down generations. So the family is a more solid unit. And that's important to us. When you get somewhere new, they kind of look at you like they'll smile, they'll sell you things, and then you come back, and then it took 6 months before the guy at the hardware store next to my house actually started to like talk to me and ask me questions. And now he's like, oh, what about this, what about that? And all of a sudden, like we've become local. All of a sudden, we're accepted, and it takes them a minute to warm up to you. But once they do, they know you. They know you're not a bad person. They know a thing. But that's how they protect. Yeah. Their society. That's right. So there's a lot of the problems that you see in the U.S., a lot of the crime and the stuff isn't here, at least in this part of Ecuador. It's actually safe. It's lovely. As far as health reasons, I became sensitive to EMF fields at some point. I don't remember exactly when. I ended up with chronic fatigue for 3 years because they put a smart meter on a house that I was in, and I went through all the best medical care you could buy. I had like platinum level medical care. They couldn't solve it for 3 years. And finally I felt better one day. And I was just telling Jesse this story earlier. And I felt better. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do a little bit of work. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to die because I've expended energy. No, I'm okay. And the next day, a little more. I'm like, is that it? Did I beat this after 3 years? And I'm like, I'm back. And this little guy shows up in his little blue truck to my house. And he goes, oh, I got a report here. Your smart meter quit. My what? Your smart meter. Oh, it says the transmitting antenna quit. It has a what? Wait a minute. I've read about this. That's those kooky people that talked about like, and all of a sudden, all of that information that I'd read came back. And I figured out that my bed sat at the convergence point of all the wires of my bedroom. It was a perfect high fidelity field intersection. And it was literally on my bed, and it was the smart meter. And as soon as it quit, and everything I've read, it said the same thing, 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, I recovered. And a week later, dude shows up. And I told him the story, and he goes, I've heard this story before. I'm going to say there's hornets all over your meter. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to fix it. Nice. Yeah. So it turns out after that, I figured out that if there's wireless too close to me, within about 30, 40 feet, a wireless access point, I can't sleep. I just wake up. I go to sleep. 10 minutes later, and something tickles the back of my consciousness. Then we get into, as it gets worse than that, they started rolling out all the Gs, 4G, 5G. 4G's not so bad. The 5G stuff scares me. Our city was slated for a full rollout, right along in front of our house. We're like, I've seen the research. I've seen the military research going back for years. I've seen the medical research out of Europe. None of it's good. I don't want to be your guinea pig. I would like to be the control group. I'm going to live like my great-grandmother did. I'm going to grow my own food. I'm going to take care of my own needs. We're going to live happily. We're going to live close to the earth. My grandmother lived to be 98 years old. Her health only declined when she decided to stop doing her garden. And she started eating commercial food. At 97. So, all of my research throughout my whole life has led us to food is of utmost importance. Eat good food. Be healthy. Everything else you can do if you have good health. So for the rest of our lives, we have, a child who is just, he's in the top 1% of development, of function, of intelligence, of things like he is just, the energy that this child exudes is mind-boggling. He is so healthy. He never gets sick. He actually had, when he was in public school for the little bit that he was in the U.S., he won the attendance award. I'm like, well, that's interesting. The unvaccinated child? What? I don't... Say no more. Thanks. Took the award, left. They don't like to hear that kind of stuff. So we can come here. You know what? That's how we choose to live. Clean, simple. We'll be the control group. I'll let you know how it goes for us. You can be the other group. That's fine. Sure. We get to choose that here.
Yeah. So you sort of prepped yourself before coming down with the container and all that for off-grid. That's kind of your ultimate plan.
Yes. Full self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
That's what we believe in. That's what we wanted to do. We had some time. We had the wife, the driving force of our relationship. She puts together a plan. She goes, here it is. It's 2 years. We got to do this, to get here, to get this, to get this, to get this. I'm like, okay, well, it's just work now, right? I mean, making the decision and making the plan is the hard part. Everything else is just work. So we put together the list. I have renewable energy experience. I used to build systems, do systems integrations. I used to build, funny enough, luxury school buses into homes, fully off-grid. And it was kind of a hoot. People just drive them around and sit there and run the air conditioner thing and the lights and the heater, and they're like, I don't have to do anything? I'm like, no, that's it. The system takes care of itself, takes care of you. So we brought a full kit of solar stuff, of panels, inverters. I built my own battery bank, big lithium pack. I've got all the stuff to run it. We brought tools. So we take the container, we plop the container down, and it's, I call it our seed. You plant the seed, and then it grows from there. And we have a big canopy that we bought for the container. It's a 20-foot canopy. So I can set all my tools under it. That's it. That's where it starts. And then I can build and build and build. And everything we build is ours. It's ours forever. We don't ever have to leave. We own the land. We own the tools. That's it. We're not... nobody ever gets to take that away from us.
So you're out here running an Ecuadorian crew, local labor, guys that live right here, in Tumianuma.
Yeah.
This is a tiny little town. I don't know how many people, maybe 500 people or, something like that. Is that a high number?
That's probably high.
Probably a high number, yeah. So a tiny little village. It's really a throwback, area. I like it. It's a cool little town. But you're out here, you got an Ecuadorian crew, local crew. A lot of foreigners have had difficulty with that over the years. You don't speak the language, you're translating on your phone. You know some words, of course, but you're not able to communicate easily. And from everything you've described, your experience has been A+. The results have been phenomenal. Talk about that a little bit.
So I've run crews before. I've worked automotive. I've worked in a managerial position for a lot of years. And different culture, different things. I got here and these guys just sort of looked at me like you're the gringo in charge with the money. And I'm like, I'm going to try not to be that. So I started showing up, my silly little van, my work pants, and I grabbed a shovel and I'm out there and we're starting to build this farm. And they were sort of alarmed that their boss was working with them, and they'd run over to do whatever. I was like, oh, okay, this must be the important thing then. And then I'd go over here and they're like, oh, that must be important, because we didn't really speak the same language. So they were just sort of following me around, and it was sort of odd. But I worked with them. and then explain like, oh, we got to do this and that, and then they're like, okay, I see why we need this ditch here for water. I don't want this to do that. Don't do this way. And I'd explain through terrible translations how we want it done. Lots of hand gestures, pictures, terrible pictures. I can't draw. But the guys, so they've warmed up to me, and they trust me. And when I say I'm going to be here, I show up. When it's payday, I make sure they get paid. No matter, even if I drive all the way down here for nothing but to hand them money and leave again. And I've done that many a time. So they trust me. So we have a respect and a trust issue. They're really good guys. They're just half a dozen random dudes, some older, some younger. I think one of them is in his early 60s.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then, one is in his early 20s. They work well together. They all know each other, of course. But we all work really well together, and it's been awesome. Like, I love my guys. They trust me. If I say to do something, they say, okay, and they do it exactly what I said, translated into what tools they have available and methodology and thing. And except for this thing, I'm like, oh, good job. Like, they used a little bit of, like, workaround. Okay. They show me like, oh, instead of using that, it's like, we just use like fire. I'm like, you just literally light part of the field on fire to do plumbing? Yeah, that works. It's different. We'll go with it. It works. So I try to support them. They support me, and we've got a really good relationship going, and they are absolutely killing it with this finca. It's, gosh, we're just plowing through place by place by place and turning it into what it could be, and I think it's going to end up being really, really productive. And they're happy to have a good job. They're happy to have a nice boss. When something comes up, there was a funeral, and they were all sort of tense, and nobody wanted to ask me if they could have 2 hours of the afternoon off to go to the funeral of one of the guy's dads. And I'm like, of course you can take the time off. They're like, what? And I'm like, go, leave. Like, it's 2 hours. Like, it's not a big deal. We'll deduct it from your thing. They're like, we can do that? And I'm like, yeah. They're not used to someone being nice to them. It's not hard to be nice. It's a small gesture here and there, and honestly, they're really happy to have a good job to get a steady paycheck. There's not a lot of money in this town. It's a pretty poor little area, but these guys work their hearts out for me.
Well, we're running out of light here. We should probably wrap this up here soon. Anything I didn't touch on that you want to talk about, or any like tips and advice for somebody who's getting ready to come down, thinking about coming down? You've done it now. You've been here, better part of close to a year. What's your anything you'd say to people, or anything else you want to chat about before we jump out of here?
Frame of mind, expectations. Expectations will make or break a lot of experiences when you go somewhere new. Moving to a foreign country, different culture, different things, different stuff, different laundry soap. Do you have expectations you're going to buy the exact same one and the thing and the stuff, and you want to, and there's people that have tried to do that. Well, I want this and I want that, and they have to have everything the same, and they want to move here and order people around. They have poor experiences. I've met other people who tell me about, oh, you can't trust anyone. You can't trust the mechanic or thing. They'll put used parts in your car, and they'll try to rip you off, and they'll do this and that. This may be more of a reflection of your own attitude towards people than it is those people. I've gone out to people, and I've had so many interactions, not just personal, but now business interactions, where I'm just constantly out and buying things and stuff. Our plumbing supplier. And I walked in there, and I'm getting a bunch of little fittings and some hose. And the owner walks by, and he goes, oh, like, how's it going, this and that, and he speaks English. I'm like, oh, it's pretty good. And he looks over, and he's like, make sure you give him, this discount. They've already rung up my total. And you just like, no, from now on I have like a 30% discount. Like
30? Ooh, that's 30 a good number.
No, it's big. And even the girls at the counter are like, what? And he's like, no, I'm not a jerk with them. I'm not like arguing over every little thing and this and that. Like, and it's actually come back, and it's worked over and over and over. I have a mechanic, and he gave me a bill for it, and it's $200, which is big for here. And I looked at it and I went, okay, paid it. It's $200, right? He did a lot of work. He had it for days. And then there was an issue with it, and I went back and I said, hey, and he goes, it's no problem. He goes, the price includes, like until you're happy. And he had it for another 2 days and did a ton of work. He took it to somebody else. He paid them to fix it. He put gas back in it.
Wow.
And I have this experience over and over where I'm simply decent and honest with people, and then it comes back. You know, we go to the market now, and the people we buy vegetables from, we go to the same lady sometimes, and she gives us a price, and then a local Aloha person will show up and try to buy something, and we hear like, she just charged her more. And then she's arguing about it, and she gets like a dime off. I'm like, we got 50 cents off. And we didn't argue when we were just nice about the whole thing. So your expectations and what you bring to the table says a lot about what experience you get back. Bring the positivity, bring the energy, accept that it's different, accept that, you know, you're not going to find like all the same stuff. It's different. There's workarounds. There's you know, for everything there's some answer. It's just an internal thing.
Really wise words. Very well said. I couldn't agree more, really, with all of that. So, well, guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Chris, for taking the time and doing this. Once again, Jesse Bayer, Abundant Living Ecuador, real estate development, Southern Ecuador. Feel free to reach out to us with any of your real estate related questions. And we hope to see you soon one day here in the Southern Andes. Have a great day.